into the light. And we are your hosts, Shaila Tayub and
Josez Pinder.
thank you for joining us today. On this show, we help you to find peace within yourself, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, through deep understanding and real life solutions. A disclaimer: the information shared during this radio show is for general information and educational purpose only. The therapist's advice and insights are based on their professional experience and should not be construed as personalized therapy or guidance for any individual case. If you are experiencing mental health concern, please seek the help of a licensed therapist or mental health professional. The views expressed by the therapist are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the radio show. So today's show is going to be an interesting one, isn't it, Joe?
Indeed, it is,
Yeah.
Shaila.
So the theme for the show today is we're going to be talking about love,
Yeah.
but not the kind of love that makes you feel safe and valued. We're talking about love that confuses us, controls us, and hurts us. Why do so many people stay in toxic relationships? Why do mistakes control for care and obsession for love? If you ever felt trapped in a cycle of highs and lows in a relationship, you're not alone. And today we're going to help you understand why it happens and how to break free. So a question out for you people listening into our show today. Have you ever stayed in a relationship even though deep down you knew it was hurting you? Have you ever wondered, why do I love someone who treats me badly? We want to hear from you and share your thoughts. Call in on 07, sorry, the number's gone. You can call in on 0116 48 22086, or you can WhatsApp us on 077 488 55055, and we'd love to hear from you. So, Joe, before we get into it, what kind of relationships do we have?
Well, there's lots of different types. We have relationships with ourselves. We have relationship with God. We have relationships to siblings, parents, spouses, friendships, work acquaintances.
Yeah,
So we are connected on all levels, and a relationship is based on our ability to relate to one another.
that's right. So we have relationship. It's not people when we think about relationship, they normally think about the romantic one,
Yeah.
but we have it all around us
Yeah.
in every aspect of our life. So when we're at home, we have the relationship with the family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, and then we have relationship when we go to work,
Yes.
even at school. You know, the drop-offs, we meet the other
Yeah.
moms, we meet the other dads. We have a relationship with the teachers.
Well, even people that you see constantly, the petrol station, the shops that you go to, you're constantly relating and relaying with individuals daily.
Yeah. So we form all different types of relationships in our lives on a daily basis,
Bonds, attachments, connections.
connections. And that's what I think that's the main thing, is building that connection. I think we are wired for that connection. I think when people feel that they're alone, they miss what? It's that connection, isn't
Yeah.
it, with someone?
Definitely.
And I think that's a human need that we have to build connections. So if we look at, before we get into the gist of it, about unhealthy relationships, if we look around healthy relationship, whether it's romantic, platonic, or with family, you know, we're looking at healthy relationship and what does that mean? So a healthy relationship is built on mutual respect for one another, trust, and communications. So here are some healthy, qualities that we have in a healthy relationship. So being able to be open and honest with each other, and able to converse our feelings without feeling judged or escalating into an argument. So we respect each other's feelings, opinions, and being actively listening without interrupting and able to express our emotions and fear. I would say that is something of a healthy way of being and being in a healthy relationship. Yeah.
Often communication is key to any relationship. It can either unlock a relationship or lock a relationship down permanently. And often it's our inability in the ways that we communicate that will decipher how these relationships and interactions proceed.
Yes.
If we don't know how to communicate effectively, not just with the external person, but with our own selves, then they can lead to misunderstandings and a lot of problems because misinterpretation comes in. So when you hear that cliche term of communication is key, it literally is.
That's right. Because when we don't have that basic line of communication, you can either go one way or another. And that is the key that holds a healthy relationship. So valuing each other's opinions and valuing each other's boundaries, I think that's a very special, thing that people, I don't think they really take serious when it comes to boundaries. We all have our boundaries, and respecting each other's boundaries is a way of having a healthy as well relationship.
But what are boundaries? To those listeners that are listening that have probably never heard the word boundaries, what are boundaries? So boundaries are what keeps you safe. So if we can imagine everywhere we look around, there's boundaries. If we go into a building, there's a boundary. The door is a boundary. You drive a car, the white lines in the middle of the road is a boundary. It says, do not cross me.
Yeah.
The pavement is a boundary from the road. But how many of us actually understand what our own individual boundaries are to keeping ourselves emotionally, mentally, physically and spiritually safe when we're in relationships?
Yeah. Saying that I feel a lot of people may feel like that they can't have boundaries. I think people think that you just give your all and that will make you, a good person, or a good wife, or a good daughter when we have no boundaries and we just give. But in the day, you're giving to them and they're feeling the benefits of it. But what happens to you? Because you've not had any boundaries in place and you've allowed that space to be open for people. Then people come to me that people have taken advantage of me, or people have abused me. And we're not having those healthy boundaries in place, and it can be done in a nice way and in a healthier way. This is when it crosses over and unfortunately people don't recognize boundaries and they will take what they can.
But it's one thing to say that, which is absolutely fine with what you're saying, Shaila, but most of the time boundaries are something that we have to hold ourselves responsible for and accountable for. So we have to check in with ourselves. What are we willing to accept and what are we not willing to accept?
Most definitely. And that's what I'm saying. People think that they don't need to have boundaries. They should be open. But that's our responsibility and ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's responsibility that we need to have within ourselves, and not to feel guilty about it. Not to feel guilty that I'm having boundaries and I'm saying no to certain things. You're allowed to, hold space for yourself to protect yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're allowed to. So also part of healthy relationship is encouraging personal growth and individual goals. So supporting one another, whoever it may be in your circle that you have any form of relationship with, being like, I call it the cheerleader of that person, and encouraging them to grow, to maneuver around life. And that's part of being healthy, and not having any form of maybe jealousy or feel like, oh, they're going so far in life, or what about me? It can be a joint effort.
Yeah.
When you wish good for someone, Joe, it's like the goodness also comes back to you. I think that's how life works.
I think it's a bit more than wishing, Shaila.
Yeah.
We can wish for goodness for somebody, but we have to also embody that goodness, our own selves, and then pour it out into somebody. A lot of relationships, lots of individuals aren't even aware of their own wants and needs, but they're forever being told you need to meet the want and need of the external person without knowing what yours are.
Yeah.
Being in a relationship is a lot like that. You meet your needs and wants of your partner and they meet yours, but what happens when it's not reciprocated?
Yeah, and that's where the balance
What happens
comes
when somebody has an unmet need in a relationship?
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems that can arise from that.
Yeah. So being supportive and being good in good times and bad times. So not just only for the good, but also being available when things are not going as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's knowing that you're going to be there for that person throughout. It's not just we're going to enjoy your joy, but also I'm going to sit and cry with you and hold you, and we can be together. So that's part of having a healthy relationship within, our communities, within our dynamics of life.
I think there's also, in a lot of relationships, something that people don't like to talk about, but it's definitely there. It's the power. Because there's two people in a relationship, and a healthy relationship will bring about not necessarily always an equal balance, but a balance between the two. That somebody isn't having too much or too less, and that there is an understanding of the power dynamics between the two. So, for example, you might have two people and one says, okay, well, my strength is this. But the other recognises, well, my weakness is this, but you've got me covered with your strength, but I can do this in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Too often, what happens in unhealthy relationship dynamics, that there is a power imbalance that's so vast that it can lead to abuse and oppression.
Of course. I think it depending on each relationship that we have with people, there's certain levels of that as well. That power, the level of power.
The power balance has to be where each individual is respectful of each other's opinions.
Yeah. So if we're looking at still healthy relationships, we're looking at equality and fairness. So sharing responsibility and decision making. We're looking at, compromising when needed, without one person always feels like they're giving their all. So we were talking this earlier about sacrifice, and I think there is some level of sacrifice that we do give, but not at the cost of our own well-being, our mind, so mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. When you feel like you've exhausted yourself and you don't feel like in a good place, then you know that you sacrifice in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Okay.
Sacrifice comes with a lot of abundance, comes with a lot of joy, when you've done it in the healthy way. And then, avoiding control, in any type of form, allow the person to be free. We don't need to control that person to be how you want them to be. I remember a while back, and we had a group of friends when I was working. You have work colleagues, and there was one particular girl. It's like when she says something, you had to follow. But me, I follow what I feel like is good for me. If you give me an opinion as a friend, I'll listen to your opinion. But at the end of the day, I will take on what I feel is best for me. You seeing what's best for me from your lens.
Yeah.
I know internally what I need.
Yes.
And sometimes I may take some of your advice because it is befitting for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I won't. But this friend, she was so upset that I didn't take her advice. She's actually broke the friendship with me.
Oh, wow.
That is toxic.
Wow.
That is totally toxic friendship. Because, I got on with it. And then she's like, oh, do you not even care that I'm not your friend? And I said, no, I don't. I'm not your friend because I told you to do X, Y, and you didn't do it. I said, I'll do what's best for me. And that's what we need to do, what is best for us. And a good friendship and any form of relationship is they accept your decision. So you may have told me something, but if I don't follow you, you respect that. Okay, I've gave you the advice.
It comes back down to boundaries and mutual respect again. I think one of the things that is also essential in relationships is the emotional support, trust and security.
Yeah.
Trust and security is essential. If you don't have trust in a relationship, you don't have a relationship, full stop.
Yeah.
Each of our relationships that we engage in on various levels has a degree of trust.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, if that trust is broken, the foundations will crumble.
Yeah. I see a lot of people, they are in relationships that they don't trust. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
But I think they're holding on to something else.
Sometimes people have past relationships hurts, that bring about their insecurities. So if you are distrustful and insecure in a relationship, that's going to be quite difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
And this insecurity can come from misunderstandings, misinterpretations, jealousy, a lack of awareness of your own self, a lack of having addressed unmet needs and wants, and also wounds from previous relationships that have caused damage.
Yeah. And this is something we're going to look into as well, where we take our trauma into, our relationships. And a part of relationship is having that trust, like you mentioned. So being, keeping the promises and being, dependable. Keeping your word is important, I feel like, in any relationship. I understand we may not always be able to keep our word due to some reasons. And be honest with that person.
We have to be real with what we can do and what we can't do.
And promise.
The thing is, a lot of relationships have a lot of difficulties because of the expectations that people are placing on each other. And when that person cannot meet the expectation, there's problems. Yeah. Because there's then met with disappointment, sadness, upset, because you promised this.
Yeah.
There is a saying that says a promise is a comfort to a fool. So the thing is, do what you can with what you have.
Yeah.
And take it from there.
Yeah.
Life is not going to be perfect, and you won't always be able to fulfill your relationship promises. It's not possible. We have to be realistic when we enter relationships. They are to be worked at.
I think people hold them to the T, like to word. I think the only person we can hold word to word and is always going to be there is God, is Allah. We are humans. We make mistakes, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, and I think people think when you don't have that connection with God, we put it into mankind.
Because we're seeking connection.
The true, authentic relationship that we want. And if we don't have it with God, we seek it out into mankind.
Yeah.
And mankind is not perfect, so they will let you down.
Yeah,
but Allah will never let you down. And that's a point to remember, is reflecting on our relationship. How are we looking at our relationship? And this is where also part of, when we talk about relationship in spirituality, is our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How is our connection with Him? So
there's one also valid point in relationships that most people don't really look at. They kind of put it to the side, but it's about the independence and the interdependence of a relationship. So that basically is where two people come together to be one, but you're still whole by yourself. So while it's really important that you do things with your partner or with your children, there's also that realisation that you also need to sometimes be with you,
be you,
an individual, as
and
well
we forget
as
that. We are the mother, we are the daughter, we are the wife, we are the friend. We are the work that we do. Whatever it is that you do, but we don't. We're not one with ourselves.
Because what can happen is if you don't claim and own your identity as an individual, what happens is that you become and you start to merge into what that partner may want you to be. And before long, you've lost your sense of self.
And this is where people say, a lot of people says, I've lost myself, or I don't know who I am. Apart from, that's why I think also, have you heard when the children leave the nest? And
empty nest syndrome.
And they've gone on with their life. She's left alone and she don't know who she is.
That's because somewhere along the way she would have lost her sense of identity.
So that's why it's very important to invest some time, spend some quality time with ourselves, know who we are. And I think that's when, it helps us to establish boundaries, because we know who we are and what we need and what we want and what we will tolerate.
But I think this is also very pertinent for both genders. This is not just a speciality for women to remember your identity. I think it's also important for men to remember their identity. You're not just the son, you're not just the co-worker, you're not just the husband,
provider,
or the father.
The perfecter,
you are also, Ibrahim, Jack, Sam. who are you?
Yeah, who are you? What do you stand
Yeah.
for? What are your likes? Some people were like, okay, what do you like? I don't know. What are your hobbies? I don't have any. These are the things that we need to get involved in.
I think people have to remember that the importance of relationships is we forget to have relationships with our own selves.
Yeah.
We're not dating our own selves. We're not figuring out what we like, what we want, what we need. Often in a culture and society, we're being told what we should like, what we should need.
What we should be like, giving all your time to everything else apart from yourself. It's known as being selfish. We covered that, didn't we, in our other episode? Where people feel
really
like,
important.
oh, you're being selfish, you're spending time on yourself. No, it's not selfish. It's called self-care.
Yeah,
That's what I call it, yeah.
That's important in a relationship.
And it's having that time to yourself and not feeling, unsafe. So having that security within your relationship, being able to feel safe and vulnerable without the fear of betrayal. So that's part of a healthy relationship too. Sharing responsibility, decision making, compromising when needed, without one person always giving in, like I said. Respecting that, like we were talking about, alone time, without feeling neglected, without feeling like, so your partner's gone somewhere, he or she, and they think, oh, they don't love me, oh, they don't care for me because they've gone and done X, Y, and Z. That's also, when we feel a certain way, is something that we need to reflect within. Where is this feeling of, if you feel like
that's often coming from insecurities.
Yeah, and where does that come from? That's something we feel like, anyway, we look into that. I think we're going to get into that, but it's always, I think, the trauma, the wounds that we carry within ourselves before we've even entered the relationship. So making sense of ourselves outside a relationship, addressing, disagreements calmly and respectfully, finding solutions with, together instead of blaming one another, apologizing and forgiving when necessary. And I think that's very important as well in a relationship. I'm not saying apologize and forgive, when it's quite serious. There's serious matters and there's something that we can work through. Yeah. So it's about knowing, again, where your boundaries are with that. So, Joe, if we look into, so this is the gist of like a healthy, relationship that we should aim for, that we should have, but, not everyone has that. And today's show, we are looking at, unhealthy relationships. So if anybody wants to call in, you can do an 0116 48222086, or WhatsApp us on 077 488 55055.
Okay.
So signs of unhealthy love, unhealthy relationship. So
unhealthy relationships are those relationships that don't provide love, growth and support. Don't promote trust, don't promote your well-being mentally, physically, emotionally and spiritually.
Yeah. Toxic relationship isn't just about physical violence.
No, it's not.
Like you just mentioned, it's emotional, mental, verbal, spiritual. It could be even financial abuse.
Yeah, that's when that can also be a branch of a toxic relationship. Yeah. But often it doesn't start like that.
Yeah.
So often toxic relationships, whether it is intimate relationships or relationships in the workplace, relationships between mothers, children, fathers, children, or friends, start with small things.
Yeah.
It might start off with small criticisms. Why are you doing that? Why are you wearing that? Don't you think you ought to change? All these little things start off small. Then we have the manipulation, where often these erodes at someone's self-esteem and self-worth, eroding at someone's confidence. If you manipulate somebody, make them believe that something isn't true, or you make them question their own sanity or have them doubting themselves, this doesn't happen overnight. This is small steps. Little questions. Are you sure you did that? Are you sure you should be doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Also, with any toxic relationship, you will always find a lack of respect and a crossing of boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah? Most people have some sort of awareness of boundaries. If you're setting boundaries and that person is often stepping over your boundaries, I would say start looking at a red flag right there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Because that shows that they don't have no respect for you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't appreciate you as well. Because if they appreciated you, then they'll know that stepping over that boundary will, will be costly to you. So they don't really care.
I think also dishonesty is quite a big one. What most people don't realise, again, like I said previously, if there is no trust, there's no truth. And if there's no truth, there can be no trust. Those two things go hand in hand. And where you have dishonesty, you have a lie or a liar, and you'll have disharmony in your relationship. So you're going to be in a state of confusion, which will warrant chaos, which will bring about a conflict either within your own self and state of being, or within that relationship itself.
Yeah.
The other ones that we have are where it is the emotional and physical abuse. It's what we often hear about in regards to DV, but all of the previous things that I've said to you before are those small seeds that are planted often before we see the emotional abuse taking place, the coercive and controlling behaviours. And like you previously said, with the financial abuse as well, because there's a power imbalance, especially if one person is making more money than the other.
Yeah.
Okay. So that also brings with physical abuse, which we know for both emotional and physical and the psychological abuse is very dangerous and can do considerable harm. We also have in toxic relationships where control and jealousy. Yeah. That's a big thing.
Control, jealousy, gaslighting, and manipulating.
Yeah.
So making you question your own, memories or
your
what
own
you've been
sanity.
saying, or they twist what you said and make it out like, you've said something incorrect. So it makes you question yourself. Or they don't. I think most of them do, because they don't take accountability. They want to flip it and put it back onto you, and that's gaslighting.
Yeah.
That's not taking responsibility, but it makes it out like. So if you're pulling them up on their behavior, that you're doing X, Y, and Z, they make it out, well, because you were being this way, this is why I did that. But that doesn't justify their behavior. So that's when they're gaslighting you, make you feel like that it's because of you they behave that way. But we are each responsible for how we behave and treat each other. In some cases, they'll give you even like the silent treatment. So if they don't get their way, they give you the silent treatment. And that's, for me, it's in order to punish
aggressive.
you. Yeah.
And often that's punishment.
And people don't see that. People think, we're giving space. And I always question when you say that we're giving space, but then not communicating, and you're just gone silent. And it's also a form of a manipulation, I think. Yeah. When you've just gone quiet, and then there's tension, the needs, the problems not being addressed. So how are we maneuvering around this? Especially if you're in a family dynamic, and there's children involved, and you work together as two people raising a family. That's going to also impact on other members around, in the family as well. So. And the relationship is also filled with intense highs, that would be the love bombing, and then the painful lows that we get. So if you notice your relationship is going up and down, 1 minute you're so great, you're so happy, and then you hit down so low.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like the opposite of what you were feeling.
But sometimes I think people think that that's how relationships ought to be, a bit like a roller coaster, that they ought to have you so high and drop you so low. And that for many people is their definition of love, or their frame of reference.
That's what
for
it is.
because
relationships are hard. Relationship does go through problems. Yes, it does. It does go through it, but at what cost? Yeah. So why do people stay in these kind of relationships, Joe?
Why do they stay? I would perhaps change the question to, why do they stay? They stay, or were you going to say, why do they leave? why don't they leave?
Why don't they leave, or why do they stay?
So often they stay because children, finances, don't know any better, don't know any different.
Yeah.
Fear will be the undercurrent that runs through every decision that they do or don't make.
Yeah.
Knowledge. I think people don't realise that the lack of knowledge and the lack of understanding makes people stay in certain relationships. And most of the time, some people don't even know it's toxic.
That's right.
If you've only known and seen this type of relationship emulated in your family, in your culture, in your society, it is your norm.
That's your norm.
It is the norm.
Stepping out of that, it terrifies a person. Even though stepping out and getting something healthy is scary for someone.
Yeah.
Because that's all they've known. So it's going back, when we talk
to the conditioning.
Yeah. To have, what's your experience of your relationships? And it starts off with our early relationships. How was our relationships with our parents? With our family members? And that's, when we're talking about the highs and lows, it's the trauma bonds that we're talking about. So the brain really gets addicted, doesn't it, to the emotional roller coaster, pain following moments of love. So the highs and lows that we feel. And people get trapped into these trauma bonds and think that it's normal because, again, that's what they're used to. That's what they think is the norm. People also like having low self-esteem. So a lot of people I've heard, many people that have separated, the spouse has said to them, who's going to want to be with you because you've got XY kids, or who's going to be with you because you don't have a job, and constantly making that person feel low and their self-esteem. And this is why it makes it difficult, because they think this is the best that they can get.
Yeah.
And that's why they stay.
I think a lot of people settle.
Yeah, they're settled.
Because they often, low self-esteem, low confidence, low self-worth, they don't believe that they are entitled to a healthy relationship, can have a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Not deserving of a healthy relationship. And most people will settle.
Yeah. They feel like they can't survive without that person because they've been with them. And so a lot of people have been in long-term relationships. So they can't see outside of that box because that is all they've known. And then we have the culture and family pressures as well of keeping people together, like in marriages and relationships. You stay for the sake of the kids. And that is true. I understand some aspects of it. Statistics show, 2-man household, one mother, father is more. But is it really healthy when the parents are in a toxic relationship? You're then pouring that out to the kids.
Yeah. Obviously, being in relationships and children being involved, it's not black and white. But I think there comes a point when you have to look at the repercussions of this relationship, not just for you in your here and now, but for future generations.
Yeah.
Because what most parents don't realise is you are your children's frame of reference for life, navigating life, and especially navigating relationships. The relationships that they see will often depict how they become and how they interact and integrate and have relations with other people.
Yeah. Like how we've learnt from our parents what relationship is. And it's up to then that individual whether that is for you or not. If you feel like, your relationship, say mum and dad, was not a good, healthy relationship, then it's upon ourselves to have that responsibilities. Because if tomorrow you're going to have children, then what are you going to show your children?
The points that we previously stated about what a healthy relationship consists of, those points are not just applicable to the intimate relationships.
Yeah.
They're applicable to parent to child, child to parent, child to friend.
Yeah.
In the work environment, it's universal. It should run throughout, but it doesn't.
Yeah. And why is that? Why do we stop in our tracks? Why do we feel like
how is it that sometimes you can have more respect for your boss at work, but you won't have the respect for your husband at home or for your wife at home? Why is that?
I've heard even like, that's so true. Or that they are so chatty and happy, with the colleagues at work, but when they come home, they're just grumpy.
Yeah. I think that's another thing that toxic relationships, lots of people don't realise, toxic relationships will often make you feel off balance within yourself.
Yeah.
You're on edge. So, in psychology we call it, sometimes you're operating in fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
But also it's depletes your energy.
Yeah.
It drains you mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. It might look like sometimes the relationship can be so exhausting on you. You don't want to pray. You don't want to go out. You don't want to socialise. You don't want to see family. Then before you know it, you're isolated.
Yeah.
You're isolating
Mm-hmm.
because everything requires too much effort. But you don't understand that relationship is draining you.
Yeah, that's it. That's where the exhaustion
It's
steps in.
taking more from you
Yeah,
than what it's
than
giving
it was,
you.
Yeah. So stepping away and seeing that exhaustion that you feel because you're